Hi, Alan. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Well, I'm very much looking forward to our discussion today because, for one, as you know, because we already connected yesterday, our companies are both rooted in science and data to inform our future decision making, which is exciting as a data nerd. And then, selfishly, I've been a loyal Orange Theory fitness member since 2019. So I have a personal vested interest in our topics today. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you for the time.
Of course, I'm excited to be here. I love talking all things marketing, data, brand. Put them all in a pot, and that's what I love to do.
Exactly. And for those tuning in, Empire Portfolio Group is one of the largest Orange Theory fitness franchise groups, which is why you'll hear me reference Orange Theory or OTF throughout our discussion today, for those that are not familiar, but hopefully will be after our discussion. So, Alan, I'm going to jump right in. Prior to EPG, you spent a lot of time brand side, and I'd love to hear more about the transition from franchise owner to franchisee.
Yeah. Most of my career has been on the franchisor side, on the brand side. A lot in restaurants and hospitality. So spent time with Arby's Restaurant Group, Moe's Southwest Grill, which is part of Focus Brands, Church's Chicken, and then also a long stint with Intercontinental Hotels Group on five or six different brands inside of that portfolio. So most of my career has been on the marketing side, innovation side, design, and also digital and technology. And now recently making the switch over to the franchisee side of the business, which has been really exciting. A lot of people ask me, what's the difference? Do you like one versus the other better? And I'd say, the change is not as radical as most people think when I talk to them. From being on the brand side, I understand really their train of thought, how to work with the brand at a corporate level, really collaboratively, and then also how to figure out how to make the impact happen with the studios and the regions that we have control over. And really it comes down to a couple things, really thinking about, what do you have control over? Because there's always that toggle between corporate and franchisee. And I think if you focus on what you have control over, no matter what that is, every franchise system is a little bit different of
Yeah.
what, where there's flexibility and where there isn't. That's where you can really figure out how to drive your business. Because it can be very complex. But from coming from the franchisor side, used to have a lot of franchise groups trying to control things that weren't in their control. And so that was always my piece of advice is, control what you have. And with that, that's what you're going to get the most impact with. If you don't have control over it, then, you figure out how to work collaboratively inside of it.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was most interested when we met. I was asking you, what is the difference between brand side and franchisee now because of all the numbers of studios, the different needs each have. So I think that's very interesting, but good to know that it's not as different as a lot of us may have thought. And that leads me into my next question from a marketing perspective on this, Alan. How does OTF leverage data to inform marketing strategies?
Yeah, so as a brand, obviously we have a lot of data as a tech and data driven brand. I'd say, from the marketing side, we're leveraging a lot of learnings across our agencies, across corporate, across other franchise groups, really focused on media, right? Media targeting, what's working, what's not, and I say there's data sitting in a lot of different buckets. And
Mhm.
so we're constantly looking and analyzing the data to try to really put it together to tell a holistic story. So from the media side, that's definitely where I say there's been a lot of time spent on how do we find the right targets that are going to be a fit for our brand, and that's a target that is continually evolving, right?
Yep.
Um, and but then also on the behavioral side of it, how we use that in CRM, how we enhance the member experience. And that's just as important for us. Retention is just as important as acquisition because we want our members when they're signing up. We want them to come in and be in classes 4, 5, 6 days a week, right? We care about utilization. And so the more we use data to help personalize their experiences, the more it helps us holistically. So it's a little bit on both ends versus in some brands, you're really just focused just on data on how do we just acquire new customers. Here, I'd say it's a little bit of acquisition and retention.
Yeah, I completely agree. And those working in tandem is what fuels optimal outputs in general marketing, right?
Yeah.
And so with the franchise model, how do you approach national versus local level marketing pushes while tracking ROI?
Yeah, it's I always like to say the marketing equation that I'm always striving for is is 1 + 1 = 3.
Yep.
And that means that our efforts are working complementary together. So if we know what the national plan is, which we do, and understanding what it's delivering, what it's driving, how far reaching it is, and what the goals are, then it makes it a lot easier locally and regionally to complement it, to figure out where are there gaps, where are there opportunities, where can we double down of what's working really well, um, figuring out what is working from a creative perspective nationally, both targeting, message wise, channel, and then same locally. And so really that's I said that's where we spend a lot of our time is looking at that combination. Now the challenging part of that combination is, from an ROI perspective, it is difficult to get to a one holistic ROI because you have multiple different channels all running at once. So it's more I'm looking more at it as individualized ROIs that then roll up to what was the total impact for this studio or for this region over the month or over the quarter. And so it's a little bit of science and math, I really feel like.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really how we're playing it today.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So yeah, sorry, I'm gonna fangirl over the over Orange Theory throughout this whole time. So I'm so sorry. But it's interesting because the end goal, the end KPI happens in studio. So for those tuning in that haven't been to Orange Theory, are not as familiar. So when Alan earlier mentioned tech-enabled, data-driven, so the value prop from a client perspective of Orange Theory is that you wear a heart rate monitor during class and it tracks your data in your app and then also live on a television screen during class so you can get a feel for how you're doing. And there is an Orange Theory that with 5 heart rate zones, you should spend a minimum of 12 minutes in the orange zone, which is like 84% to 91% of your total heart rate or your max heart rate. And so by spending minimum 12 minutes there, you then maximize your calorie burning potential for the next day and a half, I think it is. And so using that data every class to inform your benchmarks, your personal best, your records, it's all also maintained in the app. It helps you understand when you go into class, you have a purpose, you have a goal. It's okay, it's a benchmark day. I need to beat this mile run time from last time, or this row or time for row distance. So it's actually similar to marketing, right? You're setting your own KPIs and your own goals. And what I love about Orange Theory, or what's interesting about Orange Theory with the getting clients is, a lot of the marketing has to drive people to the studio, and then the studio folks actually act as an ambassador. So the people working at the studio are ambassadors for the brand to then convert, right, and get people to sign up, hoping that free trial class is enough to get them there, which it typically is. So I think that's so interesting because the personalization aspect is literally one-to-one once somebody goes into the studio, which I think is really cool for a brand like Orange Theory to be able to have a physical one-to-one connection personally. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and Kristen,
Yeah.
I couldn't have asked for a better person to be in this conversation with, because you literally did the selling and the 101 for me. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. Yeah, I couldn't say it any better.
It's
Um,
it's really great. And I think but it also is a testament to show why data is so important, right? Because not even beyond marketing, right? Using that data to then literally reach your own personal goals in life. So I think, it's a great, it's a great integration, I guess, the data side of it. And I think that's why it's so sticky, the class and the memberships.
Yeah, everything's measurable,
Mhm.
and you're really competing against yourself. So like you said, you're in there trying to look at where you're working out in your zones, seeing what your burn is, seeing where there's opportunities to run a little faster, row a little further, right? Do a few more reps in there. You're tracking your milestones, and it's that gamification of it too, but it's personalized to you. So that is the piece, because everybody has different goals, everyone has different objectives,
Yep.
everyone's starting at different points. And that's the great part about it, is that it's measurable and it's trackable with that personalization.
Absolutely. Yeah. Starting at different points and then evolving to different points too. I think, especially during COVID, when everything was mobile app based,
Mhm.
I will admit my discipline was a little more lax about about it. There's something about attending a class and, in person, that holds you accountable, and the coaches know that you aren't showing up, so they'll ask you what's going on, or if you were on vacation or something. So no, it's nice to be able to physically to go to be back physically and be able to have that experience live. And so on the franchise side of things, there are a lot more, this is what interests me a lot. There's a lot more teams and collaboration required to reach success. So I'd love for you to talk about the marketing funnel process from your perspective. How does your team approach with so many other teams involved?
Yeah, so think about it. We talk a lot about the marketing funnel and customer journey, or member journey, right? Because fitness is a unique space overall. And the first thing that we need to do is create awareness, right? There's a lot of gyms, there's a lot of options, there's a lot of virtual options out there coming out of COVID. And so we've got to make people aware. And as I Orange Theory has good awareness, but there's still a lot of areas where the brand is a little more unknown, right? The brand's been around for 12 years, so it has a very strong base to it. And after people become aware of the brand, right, then they really go in discovery mode. And it's kind of what you said is, what is the workout? How is it different? Trying to understand it, right? And is
Yep.
this the right fit for me? And we always talk to our teams around, what are they going to do? They're going to Google, and they're going to search, and they're going to look at reviews, images, content. Then they're going to go to social media. They're going to look at your Instagram page, your TikTok page, and they're going to go through, try to make those decisions. One, are there people like me at the studio, right? Um, what is this workout? How is this different from maybe what I'm doing, or is this going to help me accomplish my goals, right? So there's a lot of discovery that actually happens actually before someone actually becomes a potential prospect for us. And then they're going through the website, or calling a studio, or showing up for an intro class, and they become a prospect. And that's where we give them that one-on-one attention of, as you said, we have our sales associates and ambassadors that are in there, making sure that they're walking them through a proper intake. They're introducing them to the coaches. They're explaining the workout. They're getting a walkthrough of the space and what's going to happen. They're putting a heart rate monitor on so they can track their progress throughout class. And then after class, checking in with them, seeing what worked, and then ultimately turning them into a member. And so there's multiple phases between what we're doing at the national level, to the franchise level, to the studio level. It all works in unison, and it's kind of like the marketing funnel, really. And then the last bit that I always like to say, can't forget about, is once they become the members, is how we turn them into from the like to love. And we want to turn them into advocates. And that's where the studio really plays a role in that, with our coaches, our team. We have a number of Orange Theory events that we do almost every single month, right? We're really involved in the community and our community engagement, and every studio has that OTF community and family. So there's a lot of different layers to it that are all, from a marketing side, really activated by different parts of the system. So it's unique, and it's not a one size fits all, where one part of the organization is driving all things from a marketing perspective. So very different than a lot of other multi-unit location brands.
Yeah, I agree. I also think as we do some work over at Influential on, holiday prep and Q4 for a lot of our clients, we're talking about the purchase journey, and it's not linear. It's never been linear. And so I equated almost, or the analogy I use is hokey pokey. It's like there's one leg in, one leg out, one arm in, one arm out. And at any given time, right? And it's, gone are the days of the, oh, cool, I'm going to buy this immediately. So with Orange 32 and figuring out your new, as a potential customer, like a new fitness regimen, and is this going to work for me? Is going to fit into my lifestyle and my schedule? It's a lot to figure out. And so in that discovery phase or learning more, they might be comparing to other studios and saying, okay, well, these are hour classes. What do I get in an hour versus, another type of hour class? And so I think it's really interesting with Orange Theory's model, where the studios just play such a large role. And for me, I had signed up in another studio. I'm a regular at a different studio. And so you do build this community, and you accumulate this community over time. And it does help for accountability and ultimately, mental well-being. That's the main goal for me.
100%. I think, and really people are looking for a community, right? Especially, coming out this last year, where people were working on their own. They were, using their single screen at home or doing something different. And there is something to that community of accountability, but also, it's more fun to do stuff with your friends or people that you like, and having a team there to motivate you. And so I think there's a lot to that. And that's not something that I think a lot of other, concepts can offer. And that's part of the Orange Series sauce a little.
Yeah. And actually that's a great segue into my next question, which is, what has been the most important factor in future proofing for the cookieless future?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So cookieless, it's something that I've been in conversations around. I feel like for the last 2 years, like this continues to be a topic, but it's a good topic because it's something that, even though it continues to get pushed off more and more and more, is something that is so important to us as marketers. And so I'd say there's a couple things. One is, just being aware and starting somewhere. So whether it's, reading articles, of seeing what's coming out, talking to others. I do a lot of conversations, talking to media partners, to other marketers, saying, what are you doing? How are you addressing this? What are you testing? What's your point of view? And just really understanding out there, because I think there's so much content out there around it that you can also get lost in the noise and say, is there really a right direction? And I don't think there is a right direction. I truly don't. I say, testing right now, being able to testing things like contextual, testing different data audience sets that you have, looking at new partners that are building for that, right? And then staying informed, because what we're doing now or what we were doing a year ago thinking about it may still be different from what we're going to do in 6 or 12 months. But I think you've got to be taking action and informing and learning along the way, even if it may not be the ultimate end goal that we get to by 2024.
Yeah, I never think it's the end goal, right? What we're working on,
No.
now, it's always something. I think I completely agree with you. And you mentioned it earlier, there is no one size fits all, but it's so true, because just like every Orange Theory member, right? Every brand is starting at a different level too of whether that's tech and measurement maturity, or just in general, what they're able to, the data collection methodology. The session before us mentioned a lot about legal and bringing in your legal and data privacy teams, which is huge. And I couldn't agree more. Because I think Jonathan had mentioned in the last session that typically they're seen as a hindrance for, innovation or progress, but I actually think the opposite. It is actually helps you with innovation and progress, because you can do it while maintaining compliance. So that you have that safety measure behind you, and if a legal team backs me, I'm very confident going into a decision. So yeah, I agree. There's no one size fits all, and And I think my next question was going to ask about, when preparing for this data deprived advertising future, as the session is called today, what is the team's prioritization process for understanding what other tools are needed to adapt?
I think about this in questions, right? And so first, what data do you have?
Yeah.
Like, how accessible is it? And then how insightful is it? Because there's a lot of brands and companies that have data, but there's not, I always say, data rich and insights poor. And so, what can you actually do with it? Data is worthless unless you can actually action on it and pull insights from it, right?
Yep.
The second is, do you have the right team or partners to help manage it and to help turn it into something? I kind of think of data to, learn, I love analogies. It's
Yeah.
like I want to turn data from an egg to an omelet, right? An egg is only so good, but the omelet is actually what we're going to eat, and the omelet is how we're actually going to use it. And so we've got to make sure. And let's say a lot of companies are bringing a lot more data resources and tech resources in-house to manage this. But if you don't have it, then it's finding the right partners. There are a lot of really good partners out there who can just be offshoots of your team. So it's about having the resources. And then the third is just really building your stack. If you have to add technology, if you have to find the right partners, and then testing it, right? It's never going to be perfect. And a lot of times as marketers, I've been caught in this where it's like, you want to build something from a technology and data, and you want it to be perfect, right? It's like, oh, we're going to build this. It's going to take us 18 months to build this. Well, by the time you build it, half of what you've done is irrelevant anymore. And so I've really shifted my mindset. It's around progress and not perfection. And so, how do you get it to a testable state that you can just start using it? And that way you're learning along the way. You can still build to that perfection, but what that perfection may be may look different, or you may need to change it to look different. So it's a lot about testing before just getting fully in and big heavy investments into things, because I have too many conversations, people that have put really big investments in areas when it comes to data and technology from a marketing perspective. And then 2 years later, they go, yeah, like our business has changed, or there's a new player out here, or there's this, and then it's a scrape and rebuild. And I feel like the worst thing you can do as a marketer is continue to scrape and rebuild. And yes, you have to do that sometimes, but it's better to try to take little building blocks and build on top of them.
Yeah, I that's so well said. And I had moderated an event, Brand Innovators event a couple weeks ago on the cookieless future. So I'm going to recycle some of the stuff that I said there. But it's interesting because the demise of cookies doesn't equate to the end of marketing. Cookies have actually not existed in like Safari and Firefox for a couple of years now. So the Chrome announcement, right, was kind of on brand as like, okay, they're just naturally next. And so I have been saying to our clients that, we're working with in terms of a consulting capacity on how to navigate for different signal losses, particularly across paid social, because we run influencer marketing, right? And so it's really about what you just said, Alan, like rethinking the approach to your data capture and governance just to ensure you're scaling accurately and maintaining consent. And I think that's the biggest piece of it, right? And what you were saying around, data intake and is it helpful for you? And so, yeah, it's understanding, like, don't be afraid to like analyze all the touch points, even if it falls outside of like the general not you, but like your remit, right? Like, what are those discovery or intro touch points that a consumer can potentially, access your brand or access more information on, and what's most important, and how do you help then inform a further personalization strategy by saying, you know what, we're asking for this piece of information, but you know what, if we're seeing a lot of drop off at like in a lead form where it's like by the time you get to address, people are like, oh, why do you need this? Like, I'm out. And so if you see a lot of drop off at a certain point, like, don't be afraid to prioritize certain data capture elements over others and just say, you know what, maybe later, once they become a loyalist or some type of reward member, then we'll ask for this and explain. And I think they said it nicely on the last session too, like explaining why you're asking for that and like what it's being used for. I think for fitness, it's a little bit more intuitive of like why they're asking me for my credit card information, got to pay for the membership. But for other types of brands or verticals, it may be feel a little bit intrusive or not intuitive for a potential consumer. Like, why are they asking me for, my address or my place of business, right? Like some things like that. You might be, or when the iOS prompts started happening, right? Like, ask app not to track, and you're like, why does this app need my location? So like of the flashlight app, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just has to do with rethinking the approach to data capture and the kind of data you're using, how you're collecting it, how it's distributed, and how brands keep it secured. It's essentially what you just said: data intake, output, and management at the end of the day. So I think that's well said. And so my next question was going to talk about how has having personalized data help OTF grow and continue to keep the community engaged?
Yeah, I think the personalized data, thinking about from the member side of things. So what your metrics that you're tracking, right? Those I mentioned a little earlier, those are those things that you'll be able to work with your coaches to make sure that you are seeing the growth that you want to. If you have a goal and looking at your metrics to your personalized metrics to be eventually reach that goal, those are things that we can put in place. And so that's the side where I'd say that's what really keeps the community engaged. So like, I love real-time data. When I walk out of the class and I look at my app and I see it and go, oh wow, and then I'm looking at it comparative to the last class, or I'm looking at it aggregate for the month. That is something that I think keeps people engaged in what they're doing, right? Because you want to see that growth. And so I'd say that's really the big one for us.
Yeah, I think the fitness category is positioned so well for this, for personalization, because in my other conversations with other types of verticals like fintech, CPG, brands know what their high value audiences or high value customers look like and how they interact with their brand. And so as people are willingly sharing information directly with the brand, like hand-risen data, it's the brand's responsibility then, in my opinion, to deliver better experiences.
Mhm.
So, and offering some level of value exchange. And so my whole career has been media buying side. So I'm of the analogy of like, we lead the horse to water, and then it is the site's responsibility to get the member to convert. Or the customer to convert. And
Yeah.
so we can only take media so far, right? And so for fitness, I just think it's positioned so well for that personalization strategy and for continued community engagement. And I know I recently participated in, the name of the challenge is escaping me, but they do them like a couple times a year. It's like a fitness challenge. And so it's like an 8-week, you can sign up for it, and then you are teamed up with other people in your class, and you are that team for the next like 8 weeks, and then you get an in-body scan before and after. Oh, the name of it's escaping me, but anyway, but you get an in-body scan. And what I like about it is the in-body scan, it's not about like your weight, it's about the percentages of like your mass, your body fat. And those are actually the numbers that are most correlated to health versus a weight number. So I think it's really helpful. And the programs put forth, not only are they personalized, but then they get everybody engaged because you see everybody having fun. Like everyone has different colored bandanas or t-shirts or something to establish what team they're on. And I think that adds to the level of camaraderie and wanting to continue to do more.
Yeah, and I think back to I mean, that's one thing that our studios do really, really well, right? It's bringing that in and then personalizing it and helping you feel like you're part of a community. Back to your point around, having the data and making it actionable, customers and consumers are very willing to give you information, right? As long as you're giving them more personalized and relevant experiences. And I always say people don't hate advertising; they just want it to be relevant to them. And not all the way down like full creepy relevant, but to at a at a certain level. And I think the more and more awareness, as you said, with iOS changes, tracking changes, the more and more awareness people have to that, I don't think it really, you're going to have that segment that say, I don't want to be tracked on anything. but people still want relevance and personalized marketing
Yeah.
altogether. So
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, that leads into consumer trust. I wanted to talk a little bit about. So, how important is it for brands to reassess how they establish and cultivate consumer trust?
yeah, consumer trust is an interesting one. I'll take it back to a story from earlier in my career when I led the marketing team at Moe's Southwest Grill, and this was back in 2016 when Chipotle was going through their food safety issues.
I
And
remember.
yeah, I say it feels like it was long ago, but it wasn't. And
Yeah.
I will say they've done an incredible job of, really what they've done since then. Um, but at Moe's, we really thought this was going to be our gold mine, right? That these customers were going to be leaving from there to come over and get a burrito from us, down the street, right? We are going to see those gains from their losses. But the opposite effect actually happened where the whole really category took the hit, right? Because it put in doubt those food safety concerns in the entire category.
Oh,
And
wow.
so who actually ended up being the big winner out of it was someone that wasn't a burrito player, but that had a very food safety, clean food positioning, and they were able to steal the share at the time, just because of the security that they really provided
Wow.
um, around it. So I always think back to that around this of how people think, and sometimes like putting that doubt in their mind, they just put that doubt and they put it across everything in that space or category in their heads.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. I remember actually when like early years or when I was a lot younger, there was the McDonald's Burger King clash when they were starting rumors about, how their food's prepared, and that similar situation, by the way. I think they took the category took a hit because they said, oh, if this can happen at one fast food place, this can happen, at other, and people sought other alternatives. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes in the brand world, we love our brand so much too,
Mhm.
that we think in the consumer's mind sometimes there's more differentiation than what there is. And in our minds, and we do it to ourselves even as marketers, but you'll think about brand as a category in a lot of cases versus brand inside of a category. We, as humans, sometimes we really simplify it down. And I always have to remind myself that sometimes that, we think about brand very differently
Yeah,
than the normal people are with our marketing minds.
I completely agree. Okay, I'm so happy you said this because I have a hot take, which I will share now. So it is. So my hot take on this is because as I mentioned before, my whole career I've been on the programmatic buying side, and so often in our conversations from the buying side, we talk about brand safety. And so my hot take is brand safety is a two-way street, because from my context of my conversations as a media buyer, brand safety meant is our content showing up next to, like,
Mhm.
adjacent to brand safe content, right? And so how can we measure that efficacy of ensure our, like, content is showing up in brand safe ways? But as we're buying media, I'm like, but is the brand safe? It's a two-way street, right? So what is your brand doing to the general use? Sorry, not like EPG, but like, what is the general, what is your brand doing in general to ensure that what you're providing is, your products are safe, you're putting forth safety, like, marketing aside, like, how is your brand cultivating that trust to show and prove to consumers that what you're putting out into market is safe, and and then also from a data perspective, you're managing that according to all the laws and regulations to ensure that if I'm hand raising and giving personal information to a brand to receive a more personalized experience, that I can trust the brand with my data, that it's not going to be showing up in a breach or sold off to something random, and then now I'm on all these newsletters I have no idea how I got on, or I'm being solicited for things I didn't even I've never even heard of or is relevant to me. And so that my take has always been it's two-way. So if we're going to talk about brand safety from where's my content showing up, let's also talk about, okay, guys, like what is the value prop behind like product brand, your brand safety and how you're taking care of like customer data.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. And I think, it's becoming a more complex world in that space, right? Where yes, your email's out there everywhere. You're getting put on lists, but then, now it's coming down to, text messages. How many text messages a day do you get?
So many.
That you're like, how did I sign up for this? Right.
Mhm.
Um, things like that. So I 100% agree with that point of view. It's a two-way street, brand safety altogether.
Yeah, and also it only takes one bad experience
Mhm.
to completely be turned off from a brand. And I think oftentimes brands that have a lot of volume of loyalty members or, might brush it off a little bit like, okay, we're going to have bad experiences here and there. But it's really important, because then word spreads. I'm in the business of influencer marketing. And so what better way to market than word of mouth, right? And we see so much impact from our influencer campaigns. And just this week, actually, this is very timely, just this week. So my credit card was hacked, and the retailer, which I will not name, that my information was hacked on, it took me 6 hours to resolve. It's still not resolved. So, I mean, my credit card company resolved it in like 2 minutes, but the retailer where the data breach happened and my information was leaked, it took 6 hours. So will I shop for them again? Not for a very, very long time, because I still don't know if my information is within their system or not. There's no follow-up. The customer service isn't available or not answering the phone. And so, it really just takes that one bad experience for your potential consumer to be completely turned off. And especially a loyalty member, right? So if it's, if brands are going for lifetime value, especially for subscription or membership, it's really important for brands to be mindful of that.
Yeah, and I think it's crazy to think that of how many people have had a breach in some way, and then you start thinking through, and it's like most everybody has been involved in some. Like, how many letters have you gotten at home or emails
Yes.
that that you were breached from company X, Y, or Z. But when it comes to loyalty too, the other thing that I think is super interesting about consumers today is they're more loyal than ever, but they're also more promiscuous than ever too. And so, they'll be loyal, but with one change, they're willing to jump ship, and that loyalty will go with them. And so that loyalty isn't a forever thing. And I think, I don't know when this kind of mindset changed, but I feel like that's been a switch that flipped in a lot of people over the last couple of years on how they think about loyalty. Like, loyalty is to an extent,
Yes.
but there's but there are things I would say, but um, there's nothing to, if something happens, that loyalty doesn't hold the weight to keep them there anymore. And in the past, I think that held weight to keep people even through issues that might have happened, bad experience, anything with, what the brand's going through, like all of this, they would have still stayed loyal. And now people are willing to switch really rapidly.
Oh yeah, because they have options. There's so many. I mean, there are so many. Like in the example I just gave for earlier this week, how many other retailers are there that I can choose? I mean, endless, right? And so, yeah, there are options. And I had talked about this in another session a couple of weeks ago, but getting in front of the consumer quickly and is also imperative, and literally for that reason, to ensure that you're maintaining or growing your market share from your competitors. Because if you're not getting in front of if you're not able to find your audience and get in front of them with the right content, your competitors are. And so, and they're more likely willing to reach out with prospecting with some type of promotion, or some type of way to lure you in to get you, to get you in, which I like as a consumer. I'll always take a deal, but, but yeah,
Exactly.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. There's more choices than ever. There's more ways to interact than ever, and it's only going to continue to multiply. So, what you've done as a brand over 5-10 years ago is no longer relevant. What you did 2 to 3 years ago may not be relevant anymore. And that is the consequence and the beauty of our world today.
Oh, yes. Well said. I think it really, at the end of the day, it's about still doing the simple well, like, because the marketing fundamentals haven't changed. Once brands have the fundamentals, like anything, like a sport, it's about adapting to those changes from there. So like you were saying too, Alan, like you have those, stepping stones plugging in, and you're testing and you're learning and you're iterating off of that. And so this data deprived future shouldn't really be too much of a hindrance, because it's kind of already been going on for the last couple of years, but also, right, if as long as you have the right fundamentals in place,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
really about adapting. Yep.
100%.
Well, hello, Jamie.
Hey,
I
Jamie.
like our Oscar music.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Jamie.
This was such a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Definitely learned a lot about Orange Theory. I've never actually been, but Kristen, I think you sold me.
Yeah, let me know, Jamie. I'll go with you. It'll be fun.
Yeah, definitely have to check it out. But also, yeah, very true about like the whole brand loyalty thing, and like how trust is so important, and it can be so delicate if it's damaged or something bad has happened. But yes, thank you so much for your time. We would love to have you back on again, and so hopefully that will happen in the near future.
Perfect. Love to be on again. And thank you, Kristen. This was really fun.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, this was great. And thank you, Jamie. Great to see you.
Yes.